keys to being successful in fasting is to understand how you're going to deal with the hunger, because it's going to come, no matter what you do. There are 3 keys to dealing with hunger when fasting, and we're going to go over them and possible solutions as well. First important thing in terms of dealing with hunger is to avoid the triggers. So when you are exposed to certain stimuli, you're going to want to eat. This goes all the way back to Pavlov's dogs. It's a classic experiment where Pavlov, a famous scientist, discovered that he would ring a bell whenever he fed his dogs. And therefore, over time, they learned to associate the sound of the bell with food. So just ringing the bell would make them salivate, even though previously a bell would have no connotation at all. It's the same with humans. We're exactly the same. It's part of a conditioned response to a certain stimulus. So if you're accustomed to eating lunch at 12 o'clock in the cafeteria, walking in the cafeteria is going to be enough to trigger you to want to eat and therefore get hungry. Same thing, the time, 12 o'clock. Hey, you're reminded that, hey, it's lunchtime and therefore you need to eat. So if you're going to deal with it, you have to avoid the things that are going to trigger you. Some of the most common ones we see is the kitchen. You need to get out of the kitchen. So there's lots of reasons you could be in the kitchen, but during this pandemic, what a lot of people have done is that they've moved home to work and the space is very small and maybe they don't have a desk, maybe their kids were in the other room, so they wound up working at the kitchen table. And the problem with that is that you're constantly reminded of food. So every time there's a little break, hey, there's a snack here. Hey, there's something in the fridge that you might be able to eat. And that's a terrible temptation for people to deal with. And more than that, it's going to be a trigger for you to eat when you really wouldn't have had that in the past. The other thing is that there's other places other than the kitchen that might trigger you. So if you're used to watching TV and eating, or you're going to the movie theater and eating, or you get in the car and you're starting and you eat, well, those are going to be triggers for you as well. And you're going to have to figure out how you're going to adjust your habits so that you don't get these triggers. So there's a few problems with this. Like, what if you're the person that cooks for your family? There's no way that you can avoid being in the kitchen or being in the store. That's where you have to plan ahead a little bit. So if you are the one that cooks the meals regularly, well, perhaps what you can do is cook once or twice a week. On those days that you're going to eat anyway, you can cook a bigger batch, or you can cook several meals, and then you can have your family just heat them up, and then you can avoid that trigger of always being in the kitchen all the time. The cooking is really triggering for some people because as you cook, the smells are going to hit you. So if you're trying to fast and you're cooking, well, it's just going to be a lot harder for you to do that. The other thing is being in the grocery store. That's going to trigger a lot of people to buy things. So what can you do? You could try switching instead to online ordering. Through this pandemic, there's been a lot of these services that will deliver you ready to cook meals, so you don't actually have to be the one to cook. They're very easy. You just stir fry them or put them together, or you can have somebody else deliver all those things so that you're not tempted to eat. So that's some of the solutions for avoiding the triggers that might cause you to not be able to fast successfully. The second big key is to actually understand the nature of hunger. Most people think that hunger is just anytime you haven't eaten for a while, but that's not actually true. Think about it this way. If you look at averages, the people on average are the least hungry at 8 a.m. in the morning, and they're most hungry at 8 p.m. at nighttime. 8 a.m. also happens to be the time of the day where you've actually gone the longest without food. And 8 p.m., you may have eaten just a few hours earlier, whether it's lunch or dinner, you're still hungry at that time, and therefore it's not simply the length of time that you haven't eaten. Everybody worries that while they're fasting, the hunger is just going to go up and up and up until you can't stand it anymore, and then you have to cave. That's not actually what happens. If you look at studies of hunger, particularly for people who are overweight and trying to lose weight, the hunger is going to build, but then it sort of crests like a wave. And then once you're past it, your level of hunger actually diminishes back to a baseline. What's happened? Well, your body has decided, hey, I need to take some food energy. I need some calories. So I'm just going to take it from my stores of food energy, which is your body fat, and therefore you're not hungry. If your body has taken 1,000 calories from your body fat, why would you need to eat? You've already taken it from your stores. So that's one of the three really important things to know, because then you can simply wait it out. If you are going to be hungry, and you have to expect that you are going to get hungry sometimes during your fast, well, you have to know that, hey, if I can just wait it out for half an hour, for 45 minutes, the whole thing is going to pass, and then I'm just going to go back to normal. Well, you can then start to build habits around that. So if you're fasting, you're skipping a meal, you could instead take a big cup of green tea, for example. Or you could take some coffee, or you could take some bone broth, or you could take a hot bath, or you could go and take a walk. So you could schedule yourself to go for a walk with a friend, for example, at noontime where you know you're going to be fasting, because you know the hunger is going to hit, but by the time you're talking to your friend, you're laughing, you're walking, you're doing something, well, by that time it's past, you get back to your regular schedule at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and all of a sudden you've let that hunger wave pass. So you have to anticipate it, and then you're going to have to decide what to do about it. The other thing you can do is use certain things that may suppress your appetite a little bit. And there's lots of different things that may work. But in terms of the science, green tea is actually quite interesting because it contains a certain antioxidant called ECGC. And this, in studies, has shown a very mild suppressive effect on the appetite. And any little bit is going to help. So I often tell people, hey, maybe you should just take a big cup of green tea and let the hunger pass while you finish your big cup of green tea. I also worked with a company called Peak Tea to develop a line of fasting teas. And this is both green teas and black teas, and they have other things such as cinnamon or ginger or matcha powder that can help with dealing with those hunger pangs. There's other things as well. Coffee, a lot of people find, has that same sort of suppressive effect, or perhaps that effect just to take your mind off until it eases through. Certain types of bitter teas can also have that effect. That bitterness is going to actually turn you off a little bit. So there's certain herbal teas that are a little bit bitter. There's turmeric teas and other teas that might be very beneficial from that standpoint. One thing that people haven't often thought about is dry fasting. And dry fasting is where you don't take any liquids as well as not eat. And so you're getting mildly dehydrated, so therefore it's not great to do for a long period of time. But if you're doing less than 16, 18 hours, some people find that if they don't drink anything at all, that their hunger is actually less. It doesn't work for everybody, but some people have noticed that effect. So if it works for you, then go ahead and do it. And the third really important aspect to dealing with the hunger is building habits. Habits are super important because when you're talking about something that you're going to be doing day in and day out, well, you don't want to have to expend willpower every time you do it. So every time you skip a snack, for example, you don't want to have to think, oh, today is Monday, so therefore I need to skip my snack and therefore I need to do this, because you're always thinking about it. If your baseline is eating no snacks, well, it's easy to do no snacks. That's what you're doing every day. So if you're in the habit of eating in the car, for example, say you're in the habit of having breakfast in the car to save time, well, start by, instead of doing that, just having a coffee or having a nice cup of tea. It's going to feel very strange for the first 2 weeks, but then after that, new habit has developed. When you build that habit, that has the advantage of training your body not to expect it, which is going to decrease the hunger because your body knows, hey, I'm working. There's no food coming in here, so don't even bother anticipating it. So you really have to work on those habits because it's the habits that are going to make us or break us. And if our baseline is that we don't eat in front of the TV, we don't eat in the car, we don't eat at the movie theater, we only eat at a table, properly prepared meals with other people. If that is your baseline, it's not going to feel strange and you're going to build those healthy habits. And guess what? Those are the same habits that we've had for generations and generations that had always frowned upon eating anytime you want. So those are the keys for dealing with hunger when fasting. One, you have to expect it, so avoid the triggers. Number two, understand what hunger is so you can anticipate it and you can use some of these things that were going to help you get through the hunger pangs. And number three, make sure you build those healthy habits so that you train your body not to expect food and you don't have to always apply your willpower in order to do so. Thanks for watching this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, maybe share it with a friend so they might learn something. And if you're interested in more fasting tips, you might want to check out this other video where I go through some other keys to success for fasting. Good luck, everybody. I'll see you next week.